Medicine cures diseases, but only doctor can cure patients. Happy Sabbath, everyone. Our before growth focus is the young adults of the Sentinel Seventh Day Adventist Church. And I'm so glad that we have a doctor here for the segment, Dr. Paul Scavella Jr. Welcome to Before Growth.
Thank you.
Now, before we get into our conversation, we might have some visitors here watching this and in church. Tell us, who is Paul Scavella Jr.?
All right. So that's a question with many answers. Um, I'm, I would say, the product of all the experiences I've had in my life. I'm a junior. Some might think that means I'm actually a junior. People call me junior, but that's not actually what it means. My parents are Paul and June, but on my passport it says the second. So a lot of people call me PJ, but it's not because I'm Paul Jr. I'm Paul the second. Mm, I'm a product of Bahamas Academy, Grand Bahama Academy, Northern Caribbean University, Oakwood University, Christian education. And then ultimately I went to medical school at the University of West Indies in Trinidad and I for 3 years, and then I finished my last 2 years here in Nassau. I'm also, most importantly, a Christian. I'm a husband, father, brother, cousin, grandson. Many more things that you can say, but in total, as I said before, a Christian, imperfect, but striving to be the best version of me every day.
Amen. You mentioned that you're a grandson, and that follows up to my next question. Your grandfather, Neville Scavella, is a pastor.
Hmm.
Your dad, Paul Scavella, is also a pastor.
Correct.
Now, what made you decided to, hey, I don't want to be a pastor, I want to be a doctor? Why did you choose to go into medicine?
Uh, uh, Over in the early parts of my life as a young boy, um, I had many different interests. Science was always one of them, and I think that interest was spurred on by the TV shows I would sit down and watch with my mom. We'd watch ER on TLC, and I think that was what really sparked my interest, really trauma. It was exciting, um, and it drew me to that. And then my parents also always encouraged me to read, and one of the books that they bought me was Gifted Hands by Ben Carson. And then I saw his documentary. I met him in undergrad. He came to Nassau one summer, did a conference. I got all the rest of his books, Think Big, um, Take the Risk, America the Beautiful. And I was always, I would say, good in the sciences. And with more experience and exposure to medicine, I was drawn to it. I also, um, in my undergraduate years, I also went to the Princess Margaret Hospital and did shadowing under Dr. Alec. Um, while I was in college, though, I also thought about doing religion. It was always this tug of war, really only for the first year. Which one should I do? And it's important um, what you have influencing you in your life. So I've always had, like you said, my grandfather and my father. They've been pastors. I've been around the church um, all my life. So that influence was there, that godly influence. I did feel like, hey, this is something you could do, but at the end of the day, I believe that God wanted me to be a physician.
Amen. Now, you are PMH, correct? And recently you were in charge of your first operation.
Right.
What was that feeling like?
So it was a feeling of empowerment. My bosses they entrusted me with this surgical case, um, which which gave me a great vote of confidence. It makes you feel good that you can do something You can see your growth over the years from that first time I actually had patient encounters with Dr. Alex shadowing. I wasn't in medical school yet, where I was afraid to even put up an IV. He would just go ahead, go and do it. I was really timid in doing that to the point where my consultants have now given me their trust in order to, uh, under their supervision, of course, not necessarily them being there, but um, they give me their trust to do one of the most important things you could ever do, which is take care of a patient, and that is something that I treasure, um, and something you shouldn't take for granted is human life, and is something that you really have to take very seriously. So it's both a joy, but also there's a sacredness about it that you feel when you're able to do that.
Good. Now, coming this summer, a lot of young people are graduating from high school going into college, and the majority of them probably will go into medicine. What advice would you give to young people who are thinking about going into medicine? Now, some people might just go into it for the money,
Hmm.
correct? And some people really have a true passion about helping people. So, what advice would you give to those young people?
Well, you have to consider all your options. First of all, medicine today isn't what it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago. You may make money in medicine as well as you may not, if that's what you're going to go into it for, which I don't advise. Because the first thing one of my consultants told me as a medical student is they can never pay you for what you do. The the sacrifice it takes to be a physician, particularly in the early years, on your time, your family life, your social life, friends, is, as I said, you can't really pay for that. There's no amount of money you could put on it that would say is worth it. Being a physician is something that you want to do because you want to help people. If you are thinking about doing it, the first thing I would recommend is to pray about it. That's the first thing. Secondly, I would encourage them to get some exposure to the field, see if they can do some shadowing. Like I did, my dad helped me do that. If you could find someone that can help you shadow somebody, particularly in a field that you think you might want to do. And the other thing is medicine is very vast right now. Every day there are new fields developing. So when you get exposed to it, you might not realize all of the options there are. So you might not know what exactly you want to do, but at least you can start to see what it's like. Um, I chose to do surgery. I'm a third year surgical resident in plastic surgery. Reason why I chose to do plastic surgery is because one, representation and an influence. My current boss is a plastic surgeon. When I joined when I came back home to Nassau for my clinical years, he was the surgical um, coordinator for the medical students. And uh, what I saw in him was someone who was serious about what he was doing. I was like, this is someone that I would want to be like in the field of medicine. So I asked him to be a mentor. That's something that you should do. Get a mentor in anything you do. Really, you need a mentor. That helps cut down the time of trying to figure things out. It just pretty much gets you ahead of the game if you have a mentor. Um, and once you put those things in line, then you can decide whether or not this is something you want to do. But you have to keep in mind that it's going to require great sacrifice, but the rewards are not all in one basket. You have monetary rewards, you have social rewards, you have a feel good reward when you help somebody. So you have to think about all those things. before you decide if this is something I want to do, because it's a long road. Um, every time I tell somebody I'm still in school, they still, yeah, still. From 2006 is 2022, I'm still in university. Although I'm working, I'm still just took exams in December going. And my last set exams for this part will be 3 years from now. So that's probably over 15 years, something like that. Yeah, or 12 years, 13, something like that.
All right.
So you have to be sure that this is what you want to do. You have to be dedicated and disciplined. There are going to be times when you feel like you want to give up. You say, no, let me just go do something else. You have to really stick with it.
Good. Now, what last advice would you give to young people of this church?
All right. So for the young people, one of the things that I learned at Oakwood was I was introduced by one of my chemistry professors to a motivational speaker. He went to Oakwood. His name is Eric Thomas. One of the things that he espouses is, one, he's a preacher. He puts God first in everything he does. Secondly, you have to always stay hungry. Always try to be the best version of yourself every day. Don't ever be complacent, and don't ever get comfortable. Never stop trying to learn. Be a lifelong learner. Be motivated. Be disciplined, and always try to be the best version of yourself.
Amen. Amen. Well, that's the end of that. Like he said, put God first in everything you do. And guess what? When you do that, He will take care of everything else. No worries. Be hungry, be motivated, but just put God first in everything you do. And remember, your growth continues now.